Welcome to the fourth episode of Fuel the Firefighters podcast. I'm Jackie Altman.
Hey, I'm Andi Bond.
And today we have our guest,
Casey Towery.
Hey, Casey, thanks for stopping by today.
Welcome.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear all about you. So just really quick, I just want to touch on and review for our listeners who might be first time listening, that Fuel the Firefighters podcast is kind of an extension of a nonprofit that I started last year. And our nonprofit basically is to show appreciation to firefighters for all that they do to make our community safe. Like, it's amazing what you guys do. And when I started it, I just didn't feel like you guys got enough appreciation and that there wasn't enough out there. And then I know that sometimes when we had that cold snap 2 winters ago, I know that some fire stations went without, they didn't have a proper heater or whatever. And I thought, I think they need help with getting stuff for their fire stations, and I wanted to help out. So Fuel the Firefighters was created. And basically the weekend of 9/11, I go and deliver catered lunches and I donate money to the fire stations. Eventually, what I would love is I want to have a grant so that way fire stations can apply and I can help them get equipment or
The
resources that they need for their fire stations. And I want it to be Dallas Metroplex strong first, but I totally could see this becoming a national thing if it catches on.
Very cool.
Yeah. And this podcast is a really great way to get our name out there. And I would love to interview all kinds of firefighters. They don't have to be in my area. They could be anywhere in the nation. So anybody who's listening, if you know a firefighter, whether they live in the South or North or East or international, wherever they are, or maybe military firefighters,
That or like offshoremen.
yeah, there's all kinds of
different kind. It doesn't matter. Retired, even there's a lot of really great stories. And
actually, on that note, very, very soon in November, Andi and I are going to be taking a cruise to the Bahamas.
That's right.
We will be taking our podcast equipment and we will find the cutest firefighters.
Not the most experienced.
Right, no, experience. Did I say cutest? I meant experience. Firefighters, we will interview them.
That's funny.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm on that team.
Whether or not they're single, anyway.
Well, we're really about the experience and the sharing and the stories, and the service that you guys provide.
Sorry to objectify you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll call HR.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Also,
housekeeping. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. HR. In the month of March, we are organizing a gala for March 25th. It's a really cool location. I'm not at liberty to say exactly where it is at the moment because I'm still locking it down, but there's this guy who collected antique fire trucks. It's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. And he's building this museum and I think he's going to let us use the space. So yeah, it should be really cool. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, so for our podcast, for the listeners listening in, any stories that Casey tells us, he's not going to mention exactly who he works for, and the stories you tell, just not to actually name the patients.
Violations.
Yeah,
Or actually, even you may even be considerate about your colleagues and or others.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Just, names are potentially changed to protect everyone.
Unless you know for a fact they think it's hilarious, then you can.
Yeah. Or that we would think it was hilarious.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about you, Casey.
Well, I grew up in Irving, Texas, and I have been a fireman now for just over 23 years.
Oh wow!
My goodness, that's seasoned. I consider that seasoned. You're an old timer, but not old.
Right.
20 years.
No, you're not old. How old are you?
I'm 45.
No, you're
45?
not old at
Oh,
all.
No,
Yeah,
no.
we are in the boat
We're all
with you.
just-
We're all,
We're there, we're there. I'm actually volunteering 45 on the cruise, so,
Oh, really?
yeah.
Good.
So,
yeah, and I just did, well, a few months ago.
yeah. So, have you worked for the same fire department the whole time, or do you?
Yes.
Yes, okay, cool, okay.
Did you go to academy
did.
with this department or before, or how did that work? How did that?
So I am second generation firefighter. So I knew very early on that that's what I wanted to do.
Same department, I remember
Same
city?
department, same city as my dad. My dad did 29 years.
Oh, great.
And I'm coming up, like I said, just past 23, actually on the 18th of October.
Oh, wow.
So I knew very early on that's what I wanted to do. I got to spend nights at the fire station when I was a kid and go up and play volleyball on Friday nights. Mom would drop my brother and I off up there for basically free babysitting from 10 other guys.
Yeah.
And they'd pull the trucks out and we play volleyball or basketball or whatever in that bay. And I loved it from the word go. So that's always what I wanted to do.
That's amazing.
So I guess, did you ever work with your dad then, or no?
I did. I had the fortune of working actually 2 24-hour shifts with my dad.
Oh, wow,
Before he retired. So
that's pretty
it
cool.
was very cool. I got to drive him one shift. He actually came to the south part of town where I worked, and I got to drive him because he was a lieutenant. And so I got to drive him one shift there, and then there was one shift that I got to go up and work with him at his station.
But did you ever work the same shift at different stations so you could hear his traffic on the radio, or you could hear his voice?
No, actually, when I was in the academy, he actually did a very short stint in communications. So I did get to hear him on the radio some with that. And when I first came out, I guess the first probably 6 to 8 months that I was out in the field, he was still he was still in communications. But as far as us being on the same shift, no, we never were. So he was always on A shift. I've always been on C shift.
Oh, so you come in and then you go there.
So it made things challenging with family vacations and holidays and stuff like that. But we're a fire family, and my wife, Sarah, and my mom and the rest of our family just have always adjusted.
Fire families.
We never do Christmas or Thanksgiving on Christmas or Thanksgiving. We always do it on a different day.
Right.
So it works.
Yeah, from my past experience and just being an EMS, I understand that too. You get lucky if you're off on that day. It's like, whoa, in 7 more years, I may be off on that day again. Yeah, that's great.
I never thought about that.
We're usually, and people are very, just for the listeners, I mean, I just worked on the ambulance quite some time ago, but people are really gracious too. And sometimes it's questionable what they bring by and share, as meals. But, a lot of times we appreciate prepackaged or like home cooked, especially in smaller towns. I loved that. But people are kind, a lot of times they provide things.
So it's funny you said that. I can't remember if I mentioned this in an earlier podcast or not. I had a firefighter as a patient once because I'm a dental hygienist. That's my vocation during the week. And he told me that when people bring stuff by, they smile, they say thank you. And after they leave, usually they throw it away. That's what he said. Because he was like, we've been to houses, they're hoarders, they've got 1,000 cats.
I was going to say there's cats on the cabinet and a lot of people.
It depends on what part of town you work.
But from the listeners,
Okay.
for the listeners,
It's always appreciated the thought.
that, and
right?
Gift cards or local grocery, or asking them what would be helpful sometimes, or
Right.
That's actually happened to us several times recently, where there'll be somebody behind us in the grocery line at the grocery store, and or in front of us, and they'll just say, I'm paying for all our groceries.
Yeah,
Which is awesome.
we
really appreciate it.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So for the groceries, since we're there, do you guys pay for your own groceries, or is there like an allowance? Or
Everybody brings in $15 a shift at my station. And whoever's up to cook that day goes, and they take the $15 per man. So it's basically $150 for the shift. And then whoever's going goes to the grocery store and they buy the stuff for lunch, for dinner, and then breakfast the following shift. So that when we come in, we don't have to go to the grocery store super early in the morning. We
Okay.
already have our stuff there for breakfast and then cook.
It's great. You know, for those of you who are listening or those of you who are watching, I mean, as we know right now, just our current climate where the groceries are a little bit more expensive and there's less in them, you know, it's a great opportunity to think about fueling the firefighters through Instagram, Facebook, different links that are provided to donate if you want to do that.
Yeah, actually, we do have a link if you want to donate to fuel the firefighters on the Facebook, on Instagram, on my website even. And you can choose to do a monthly donation or a one-time donation. And then I guess if you want, you can email me and you can designate your donation for groceries, and I would get that out to the firefighters. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, because even if you wanted to share very briefly, Jackie, in your the recent donation, the lunch delivery and the gift cards, that was a huge opportunity. So therefore, this would be the same type of.
That would be, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'd be really cool.
Yeah. It just came to my mind thinking you guys are buying groceries at $150. How many of you were in the station at one time eating up the $150? That's where I was going.
My shift is we've got 10, so we've got 150.
That's 10.
But you know, it's crazy because when I first got on, we were paying $6 a man for groceries, and now it's 15.
Okay.
And there's some stations that are 20. It just depends on, you know, you get the guys usually get their kind of set meals that they do. I mean, it rotates so that I roughly cook once a month, unless it's a weird time when you got a bunch of guys off, you know, on long vacations or having babies and stuff. It doesn't, it only comes around about once a month. So I can pretty much cook. I've got 1 or 2 meals that I do, and I can just alternate those, and nobody really gets tired of them because
It's only once.
you're only getting it once a month.
Right. But the cost, you know, I don't think we think about, you know, that you guys are paying for that and you're providing service. And I mean, granted, we all take our lunch to work or we buy our own lunch, but there's a lot of you. And I don't think that people really understand kind of the life of a firefighter in the station, which is maybe a whole nother.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's an enigma to me. I didn't even know that you guys paid for your own groceries. I just figured since you guys are
Don't you think? Well,
the city.
No, which we would pay with taxpayers,
No.
taxpaying dollars. Yeah. No, or like they take their own lunch.
Yeah,
They don't get
I
like,
just thought because they have to stay there for that shift for that 24 hours. I just thought that, I don't know.
well, I'll just tell you when I was on the ambulance, from my experience, when I was on the ambulance and I would work on a 24-hour, I'd be on 24 and then off 48 or work 48, 24. We would go to the grocery store as well. And we didn't bring anything from home because our home groceries were for family or for at home. And
Sure.
If we brought a lunch, it would be a snack or something in particular I wanted to snack on, you know, sunflower seeds or whatever. Because you sit sometimes in the ambulance waiting at different station areas in the city. I mean, but yeah, we went to the grocery store and it was probably $5 to $6 back then, you know, a day. And there would just be 2 of us or 4 of us. And we just bought $20 or $25 worth of groceries.
I want to know what your go-to recipe is. This one that people don't get tired of. We need to know the recipe.
I've got 2 that I do, and they have some guys have tried to steal them over the years.
And you sound like you're not getting,
One guy in particular at my station has tried to steal several of my meals, but I do a poppy seed chicken casserole that my grandmother actually made for me when I was a kid, and it's always been every station I've ever worked at. I've never had anybody that doesn't like it or complains about it. It always goes over well. So that's probably my go-to.
What about lunch? Do you do sandwiches or something easy or
lunch? I get creative. It depends on what the guy cooked the shift before and if there's a lot left over, because we try to save money, obviously, if we can. And so if they did, pork chops or something the shift before, and we've got some of that stuff left over, then we may try to do that for lunch. But usually for me, if I've got to do lunch and dinner, I'm usually doing like a taco salad for lunch.
Taco salad, yeah.
Or soft tacos, kind of build your own type deal. And then I'll usually I like to do the poppy seed chicken. I'll do carrots with that and green beans and rice and salad.
That sounds good. I had two different thoughts crossed my mind. Was in the do you all throw your money in the kitty to have extra cash on hand if there's enough left over, or do you just hold back your cash and not put it in?
So everybody pays 15 regardless. And if I go to the store and I'm like, those meals for me, I'm able to do, I've got it down to the point where I can do it for about $100 or a little over. And so
Wow.
I can save some money. So when that money, we bring that money back and we'll give that to our officer. He keeps that in his locker.
Great.
So that when we have things show up or some new rookie comes in and decides he wants to do something, has no idea what it costs, and he goes $50 over at
Right.
the grocery store, we've got money to cover that. So
Like a petty reserve.
So, yeah, I mean, we did go down that rabbit hole about groceries, but it's just such a big part of living the life at the station, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
mhm.
so that's, I think, to the point that like any opportunity that we have to continue to fuel the firefighters, these gifts, these donations go to these guys and to their
Absolutely.
stations.
Yeah, so when we went this year, we donated to the 11 fire stations $300. So that money, I think, went toward, one station got themselves a new TV. They said it's huge, which is really exciting. I need to find out what the other fire stations did with their money.
I need to know who got a really cool big TV for $300.
No,
that's a good deal.
Do they get a discount? I'm sure maybe, or someone had a credit, but they did. I can't remember what they
I
said.
think what they said was they used the $300 and then they pitched in a little bit more, and the TV was like maybe $500.
That's great.
But yeah,
That's
so,
awesome though. Yeah.
yeah.
And then you have the guys there who can just hang it and
Mhm.
set it and do all the stuff.
And then I think like the previous year, there was a fire station that used the money for their cable bill, because the cable bill, I guess, is extremely high too. I'm not really sure how that works, but it was like really a lot of money. I'm like, okay. But anyway, so what else about the fire station do you spend time doing over there? Like, do you guys do a lot of sports, like your specific station? How do you guys spend the time?
We're supposed to get 1 hour of exercise a day. So my shift is pretty good about everybody works out and tries to stay in shape for the job. And so we'll definitely work out, not necessarily as a group. Guys do their own thing, but usually everybody gets to work out in at some point. During the day, there's a lot of TV that gets watched by some guys. I'm not a big TV person. One of the biggest complaints that firemen that have been around for a little while have now about the way that they're building these new fire stations is the old fire stations, we were right on top of each other. All those spaces were big and they were community space. Well, they weren't big, but they were community spaces. The bedrooms were one big room with a bunch of beds thrown in there. And now, while it's nice to have the privacy when you go to bed at night, most of the stations now, everybody has cubicles. And
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, and with cell phones weren't really that big of a deal when I first got hired, and now it's like everybody's got their own laptops and cell phones right in the pocket. And so there's not near as much. That would be my biggest complaint now, would just be that there's not as much community. We don't just sit around the table and talk, or sit on the couches in the living room and talk as much as we did when I first got hired. So
I can see that.
lost a little bit.
It's the interpersonal interaction just globally, much less just in your regular job. Yeah, I can see that, because we all just kind of get into whatever we've got going on and it's right there, or even your sport or your, but do you all have a team, like an intramural or whatever it's called, like a team of sports, or y'all play ball or anything?
We don't.
Against other department or stations, I mean?
There's some stations that they'll have got the space out back or whatever that play volleyball in the evenings or whatever. Where I work, we are pretty much in the concrete jungle.
Oh,
Yes.
We even have underground parking. Like we can't even,
I wondered.
our lot is completely taken up with fire station. So
it is how I've seen it. I wondered where you park.
okay, so we're going to move on. I'm going to ask you a question because it is about Field of Firefighters is about showing appreciation to you guys, but it's kind of like in honor of the 343 that fell in New York. And I mean, you're 45, so you probably were like in your early 20s,
He
right?
was firefighter. You were actually
You
on
were
the
already-
fighting fire.
So were
Brand
you
new.
on shift or what? Like what was your day like that day? Do you remember where you were?
I do remember exactly where I was. When the first plane hit the first tower, I was still in bed asleep because I had worked my shift the day before and then had rode an overtime ambulance the next day. And so I was exhausted and I was still in bed. My wife was pregnant with our daughter, with our first, and she came in and woke me up and said, "You need to get in here and see this." And woke me up, and I went in and started watching from that point. So I went to the station the next day for my normal shift, and I can tell you that that was all consuming for several
I have
weeks.
chills right now.
Yeah.
All we did was watch the news for several weeks.
Yeah.
Other than make runs.
Were there, I guess, calls for larger cities or different municipalities to help and send folks up already? As soon as it was happening, were y'all already talking, I guess, as an agency to say, hey, we can go volunteer? Do you have any colleagues that went?
I don't have any that personally went. I do have family that lives in Connecticut, and so I know that some of them helped out in one way or another. But I was not a part of any special operations team. Most of that stuff was handled by FEMA, sending the national or the FEMA recognized urban search and rescue teams are the ones that went up there and did most of the work along with the New York firemen, obviously.
Yeah, and I think I know the answer partially to that question because we have another firefighter that's retired that's going to be doing an interview with us soon. He is retired, but he's on the Texas task force. And he was saying that he was deployed out there for 2 weeks. That particular firefighter also was deployed out to Hurricane Katrina too. So when that happened, but
Which tells the story that you guys are not just showing up and sitting inside all day long. That I was going to ask you too. It takes me to another tangent. That's what I was going to ask a while ago. But you're not just sitting inside the station, all glued around the TV. There are chores. There are things to do.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a station to run, and there's administrative. There's
education.
Yes. There's so many things.
How many hours of continuing education do you guys need?
I don't actually know the number on that, but I am at one of our urban search and rescue stations for my department, and we have training just about every single shift. We do something at the station level every weekday. Our officers will give us the weekend just to relax and like this time of year, watch football and stuff during the day, but we will do some sort of training, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's an all-day deal, but it'll be an hour or more each day of some sort of training that we do, whether it's fire related or whether it's special operations related. But yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, the fire station, it's our second home. Like our moms and our wives don't show up with us. So,
And there's no cleaning crew.
yeah. So the bathroom, if you don't clean the bathrooms don't get cleaned. So, and a lot of times that's reserved kind of as the rookie's jobs, but it depends on what station you're at too. And the station that I'm at now is there's a lot of guys that have got not quite as much time on as I do, but are in the 10-12 year mark. And so everybody pitches in and helps out. And when it comes to, like you said, even earlier with cooking and cleaning up after, and yeah.
Oh my gosh, Casey, I don't know this answer. What is your ranking? Like, you're definitely not a rookie.
No,
Or
I'm a driver.
A driver?
I drive a truck. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
How many
that's
years normally do you apply for that? Do you bid on that, or do you have to be promoted to that?
It's a promotion. In my department, the driver engineer rank is just a written test. There'll be 500, 800 guys show up to take the test, and then there may be 100 slots. So it just kind of depends on where we're at as a department in attrition, how many people are retired, whatever, how many they're actually promoting. I actually waited really a long time to promote. I had 17 years on before I ever even took a driver's test. And I made it on the first one I took. So
Is there, and that, no, that's remarkable, really. Is, in the event that there was would there be an opening somewhere that you would need to fill? Would you move stations if you made driver potentially? If there wasn't a driver spot open at your,
most of the time there is not a driver spot or any other rank, whether you're promoting to lieutenant or captain. There are a handful out there of guys that have gotten to stay at the same station, but we actually feel like, or I feel, and I know that kind of our command staff does as well, is that it's not really a good idea to move from being a private or a driver to an officer and stay at the same station with the same crew.
agreed?
Because you're having to go from being a buddy to being a boss.
It's
and
difficult.
it can be a tough transition depending on the crew that you work with and your leadership skills, I guess. So,
And I say that too, just in other professions, it's sometimes difficult to manage your recent former peers, and or sometimes just to avoid, any contention or potential someone else who applied for the role.
sure.
Right. So, and you get to experience and learn from moving to a different station with different personalities and opportunities, challenges they may have or need help with.
Well, it makes you a more well-rounded firefighter. The first 15 years of my career, I mean, I worked in a part of town that it was pretty much just small one-story frame houses. And while we had a great time and we fought a lot of fire, I had no experience at all with elevator emergencies, with high rises, large apartment complex, multi-story complexes. And so as I have moved around a little bit in the city, it's really helped more well-round me as a firefighter, because I've gotten to experience different. I've never been stationed in our downtown area, our central business district, but the part of town that I'm in now it's like a central business district that's just moved a little bit outside of the central business district. So we've got everything in my district right now, from one-story frame houses that are 1,000 to 2,000 square feet, all the way to homes that we were in a home the other day that was 22,000 square feet. And then high rises and office buildings and all that kind of stuff, apartments. So there's a lot of aspects that help if you move around a little bit, to learn different aspects of the job.
Let me ask you a question, and this may be a little bit off the current topic, but with regard to all the different types of structures you just described, would you say that the majority of the calls that you run are to support EMS, or are they actual fire on an average day?
It depends on what you're writing. As a department and as a nation, the fire departments across the nation, EMS is definitely, and you're in a support role for EMS.
Sure.
Most of the time. There are areas of town where you're going to fight more fire, but you can't chase fire. It moves around the city. It's crazy. I remember when my dad and I were both on at the same time. My dad worked in an area of town that wasn't historically known for fighting a lot of fire, but it just so happened that where I was, we did, but we were on what we would call a drought. We hadn't had any fire in it seemed like 2 or 3 months, and my dad was burning it down in the area of town that he was in. And so you can't chase it because it moves around. It'll move on you.
So, I want to ask you, Casey, as far as being a firefighter and fighting fires, I know that you all do a number of other things. When someone calls 911 or they call the fire department, what are they calling about? What do they need you to do? What do they want or need from you? Kittens in the tree?
Everything. We are a catch-all. We really are. I have done everything from find a remote control for their television set, all the way to relighting a water heater. We obviously make water runs. If you have a bursted pipe, something like that, we're going to come do water removal.
I didn't know that.
Gas testing.
Yeah, kids locked in you lock your kids in the car or lock yourself out of the car. Yeah, plumbers, electricians, we pretty much do it all.
And then, we know that we see fire trucks on the highway for accidents.
Sure.
A lot of times, you have the different tools that obviously, an ambulance doesn't have. So we know that your support is there too. And then also you're in a really big red truck. So we see, that we need to start moving over and start respecting your space.
Well, you do.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't.
Yeah. We should be pulling over to the right if we see,
I have a question that never occurred to me. Okay, so if the person who's in need of services, they call 911 and they're talking to the 911 person, that I guess this is the operator.
Mhm.
Do they call you guys and say, oh honey, you're not going to believe the situation or whatever?
No,
Or
no,
it's just like a code that they punch a button.
exactly.
they just connect it.
As soon as they answer that call, they get
So
some
you don't-
very minimal information that they need, and they press a button based on the location and who it's dispatches who is the closest.
I bet in small towns where it was like Mayberry, they probably talk a little more, but with as many calls coming in,
Right.
with remote controls lost.
no
and
time
things,
for
there's
gossip.
time.
Now we do sometimes get comments on our,
I'm sure.
on our
Right.
MDCs. We'll get comments, and some of those can be funny at times. Things that the caller has actually said to the dispatcher, and they'll type it in. So sometimes we kind of have an idea of whether it's something really, really serious or might
Yeah.
not be so serious when we get there.
Well, I bet since you've been in the business for a long time, do you have maybe a story you want to share? I always like to ask that. Anything that sticks out in your mind in your career that
Defining
is like a
moment or funny or
funny or
highlight.
whatever.
That's a broad
That's
broad topic.
It's
It
a
is.
big, it's a big gate there.
I would say probably, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, one of the funnier runs that I have made was a 911, and also one of the most frustrating at the same time was a 911 call for a residence, and then the woman happened to be in her mid to late 80s, and if she had one, she had 200 cats in her house.
Oh,
And
don't look at me.
she
So Andi has cats. That's all I'm gonna say. She's got cats.
Back to you, Casey.
anyways,
So she had 200 cats.
she called, and when we got there, she really we couldn't really get her to tell us what she needed, and finally she just came right out and said that she had lost the remote control to her TV, and she had called, and it was 3 o'clock in the morning.
Bless her heart.
And so we get that a lot, believe it or not necessarily a remote control, but elderly people that are
Yes.
lonely, that they're awake in the middle of the night for whatever reason, they'll call, and it can be very trying on our patients at times, but we do our best to continue to give the good customer service that we would, whether it's an emergency or not.
Let me ask you a question to that. No, and that's got to be colorful, because I think that the general public doesn't probably believe that you guys try to go to bed and try to get sleep, because it is 24 hours. And so a 3 o'clock call means that the tones have gone off and they woke you up and you have to respond, right?
Exactly.
So rain, snow, sleet or shine. Do you send the engine in a case like that, or do you send a smaller truck?
Hopefully the engine, since I drive the truck, hopefully they send the engine. I don't have to go to bed for something like that. With that, I was on an engine company that day that we answered that call. So hopefully an ambulance does not get called for that.
Sometimes
They're overloaded as it is. Their run volume is crazy with emergencies. And then you tack on things that are not emergencies that people call for as well, that ambulances get sent for. It just depends on what they say when they call,
right.
as to what button they push for who they send. So,
Well, I mean, I had one time years ago, again, I was on the ambulance. I had a call for blood coming from the ear of an elderly man. It was about 2:30 in the morning. And so we ran the call. And when we got to the house, he had his little small square suitcase packed, like a little briefcase bag, and he was ready to go. He had been reading the newspaper, and he had lost his wife maybe a year ago. He was very elderly, and he had scratched the inside of his ear with a paper clip while he was reading, but he had blood coming from the ear. And while I could see that it had now dried, he wanted to go to the hospital and he was dead set to go to the hospital. And so we carried him on the ambulance. And, you know, I don't know all his reasons, but that was the call, blood coming from the ear.
Yeah.
So,
Well, actually, Rose, my oldest daughter, she got attacked by a dog in Arizona when we were visiting my oldest sister. Her dog attacked my daughter when she was 15 months old.
Whoa.
And my sister had just had a baby, and so she couldn't drive. Blood gushing from my daughter's ear. It was awful.
oh my gosh.
And we all raced to the car. And I think my sister, Allison, if you're listening, I believe you left Lila in the house alone. I think we just all panicking. We got into the car and she's about to start driving. She's like, wait, I can't drive. I just had a baby. And then my other sister, we did this like fire, the Chinese fire drill. She gets in the car. She's like, wait a minute. I don't know where to drive because this is Arizona. And I was like, forget about it. Just call 911. So we call 911 and the Arizona firefighters, they come and my middle sister is going to kill me for telling the story only because it's really funny actually. So the first guy comes in, I'm sorry, but he was really cute. And then the firefighters, like they came in one after another, and it was just like a calendar. It was crazy. And my sister, my daughter was gushing blood. I don't know how else to say from her, but this is why this reminded me of the story from the ear, gushing blood from the ear. And my sister was sitting there flirting with a firefighter.
Meanwhile, your kids
just like, you know, and yeah. But so they took us to the emergency room, and she got like 11 stitches in her ear. Good story.
Yeah.
Chandler Fire Department. Hey, thank you.
Chandler, Arizona.
Chandler, Arizona.
That's great. Yeah, if there's an Arizona firefighter out there.
That's right. We can
It's a call.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's a good story. I'm sure you get called for all kinds of things.
All kinds of things.
In the middle of the night, yeah.
So with all that, you have some free time, right? So you do 24 hours on, 48 hours off. How do you fill your 48 hours?
Well, for the longest time with kids, my kids are both growing out of the house now.
Okay.
I chased the kids around and got them to and from their activities and sports and all of that stuff in school. But in the most recent years, I actually have started up a company on the side that actually makes fire tools. We only have one tool right now, but it's a very specific tool that we make, and we launched that, I guess, 3 years ago this last September. So we're just over 3 years into it.
Okay.
Is that for sale or use only by fire departments, or is that something a civilian regular resident would use?
Pretty much going to be only for firefighters. It could be used in the demolition world as far as
like construction
or, you know, remodeling, I guess. But it's called the G2 pike pole. It's very specific for pulling the ceiling boards and wall boards of shiplap houses. Back before, houses that were built in the 30s and 40s, anything really before the 40s, before sheetrock became real prevalent. Drywall is what you may know it as. Back then, most of the houses had wood clad walls and ceilings, and they were structural, not like what Chip and Joanna Gaines are doing now with the remodels and decorative stuff, but it was actual structure back then. It made the walls, and so the tool is very handy because we as firefighters, whether you're in the south or whether you're in the north, doesn't matter. These houses are all over, but we have got to get into the attic space to check for fire extension during an active fire, and the same within the walls during overhaul and stuff like that, to make sure we've got it all put out. It can be very difficult with just a standard, what they call pike pole. So.
No, that's a really interesting, and that you've taken the initiative and continue to be committed to getting it made and taking to the new level.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Casey, is at the end of the interview, I can put a link
That'd be great.
for your tool. So any firefighters that are listening or demolition people that are listening that might be interested in that tool, you guys can check it out. Sounds really cool.
Be awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, so
May I have a quick
What?
question?
yeah.
Your kids that are raised, you have two
Mhm.
kids, are either of them interested in firefighting or are
My
they?
son is.
Oh,
Yes.
That's great.
He wants to be a third generation. So he is actually down at a trade school right now, learning welding and fabrication.
Oh,
But he's at an accredited college, so he's getting his college hours so that he can start applying for fire departments.
that's amazing. That's great.
If you have a college degree, does that, how do I ask this question? If you have if you have a degree,
Do you need to have fire science
do you,
as
does
a,
it make it easier, or do you start higher up in the fire department, like in the military, you can be an enlisted officer versus an officer?
It doesn't
Sure,
work
there's
that
a
way,
more
at least
military, yeah.
with our department. There may be some out there that do. I get paid more because I have a bachelor's degree. But it did not give me a leg up during the hiring process.
Okay.
You have to have, my department requires that you have 45 hours of college before they're even will consider your application. So there are some out there that don't have to have any.
was it by role or is it grandfather or they've been on the department for a long time, been in the department for a long time and they don't have the education, or why is it that they wouldn't need any hours? Is that what you mean?
No, you have to have, where I work, you have to have 45 hours of college and or 4 years of military experience with an honorable discharge in order to be able to be even considered for hiring.
I see. That's great.
Though that's the standard that has been since I got hired in '99. Now prior to that, there are some guys in our department that got hired at 18 right out of high school when there was not a requirement. They're still somehow working on the job. So
Maybe they've learned, or it's commiserated by this many years, hopefully, that they.
Well, if you have a family member in the fire department, does that give you a leg up?
Does it give them a
No,
leg
it's
up?
not like a legacy
not
kind of
really.
a.
I mean, we have many second and third generation firefighters within my department. But as far as the hiring process, it doesn't give you a leg up.
Okay.
You still have to do, if I had not been a good candidate, regardless of the fact that my dad was on, doesn't mean that I would get tired.
I have a friend that is a police officer and has been for quite some time as a sergeant, and his father was highway patrol for a bunch of years, and he still has not been accepted. I mean, as a
Okay.
candidate for highway patrol. So it's really not about who you know all the time, unfortunately. It's interesting.
Well, now we got to ask some fun questions. All these tattoos, do they have a meaning, or is it?
Yes, they do.
They do.
Every one of them does.
It's hard. It's a hard question to answer.
Yeah.
I
I
So.
don't know that we have time for all of that.
no, I have a bunch of tattoos.
Right, so Andi has a bunch of tattoos. She gets
My legs are
on her legs, and anytime that she travels, she gets like a passport
Oh, really?
stamp.
stamp.
But I have
It's
other,
kind of cool.
I have others, like if the viewers can see, I mean, Casey has his arm, it's full sleeve, and then he's got his, half sleeve over here and some other work. But
Yeah.
they all have some type of story. I
sure.
imagine.
Well, I know a firefighter that when she graduated the academy, all of the people in the classes she was with, they all got the same tattoo or something like that. I was just wondering if you had anything like that.
I don't have anything that anyone else has.
Okay,
On mine at all. Just me.
Just you.
Yeah.
just, all right, it's just him. Favorite movie? Do you have a favorite movie?
Favorite fire movie or just favorite movie?
We can do favorite movie and then favorite fire movie if you want to answer it like that.
Oh, probably my favorite movie of all time is Lonesome Dove.
Oh.
It's just, I love it.
Yep.
I watch it every year. That's kind of a tradition for me. I may watch it more than once a year, but usually on Christmas, after the kids are done opening presents and everything settles down, everybody's going and doing their thing, I sit down for about 4 hours and watch Lonesome Dove.
Was it a Christmas movie?
No,
No.
Oh.
It's just, I have that time.
It's a 4 hours.
Yeah.
It's a two-disc movie.
Jewish girl in the room. I don't know.
No, and it's also one of those like rainy or snow day or like
Oh, yeah.
day off or like I don't feel good today and I'm not getting out. That's that. It's a really good. It's more Western, Texas Cowboys, Texas Marshals.
Okay.
Yeah.
The most Western I get is Yellowstone. I love that show, Yellowstone.
It sounds a good show, but it doesn't.
Texas Rangers. I apologize. Were they Rangers?
They were Texas.
Marshals.
Or Chuck Norris.
No,
No.
he doesn't compete with these two.
Okay. Well, favorite fire movie.
Oh, probably just have to be background.
Everybody says that.
What about I ask every one of you guys too. Did you see what was it called? What's the Mark Wahlberg?
Oh, we have to get Mark Wahlberg to come.
Yeah,
and do
the Horizons,
Mark, if you're
Deep
listening.
Horizons.
I
The
haven't seen that.
the oil spill, the BP oil spill on the coast, and then they were like offshore, and then there was fires. I mean, tons and tons of fires there. I don't think he was fighting fire, but he was in it, and they were escaping. It was a lot of fire. It's just a good one.
I think at this point, we're starting a campaign. Mark, if you're listening,
Yeah, Mark.
if you're watching,
Marky Mark.
Mark,
We're of the
well,
age,
now
all of
he's
us.
gonna hate us.
No, he's the
Because you said Marky Mark, he's gonna hate us.
no, he's the Funky Bunch guy. You always will be.
No. Anyway, it's good.
Yeah, that's funny. That takes us back in time. Yeah, if you were asked to be in a calendar,
Oh,
would
yeah.
you be in a calendar? Or have you ever been asked?
I've never been asked.
Has anybody in your surroundings in this municipality?
We actually had, my department had a calendar several years ago.
Wow.
It's been a while.
The mythical calendar. I've never actually seen one of these calendars, but
Oh,
They're out there. They exist. I don't know that I would do
they're
it.
like 1999, 2000 models, or like, are they like current, more in the millennium? Did they have one? And how did they do that? Did they just put out something on the like, hey, if you want to volunteer?
I don't know. Like I said, I wasn't asked.
That's
yeah,
weird.
it's weird.
Somebody's wife got creative with her new craft kit or something.
Maybe. You weren't asked, but maybe because they didn't know you.
I don't know.
I don't know.
So, well, no, if there's a good reason or good cause and it was appropriate, I think
guess.
I would do it. I mean, I would not for firefighters, but I would do it.
Well, when the gala comes, Hank, if you're listening, I didn't forget, we're gonna auction you off, honey.
Yeah, Hank, he's funny. That guy was hilarious.
He's very shy.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great mustache though. You have to watch.
He's got the best fireman mustache.
And he gave it a good shot with the arm wrestling.
He did, but
I'm not sure he didn't cave to the lieutenant.
yeah, I think in a few, hopefully next episode or episode after, there's another firefighter named Rudy, and I think he's gonna bring someone, there's gonna be a rematch arm wrestle. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And but anyway, well, I really appreciate you, Casey, for coming
you're welcome.
and spending time with us and hearing your stories.
Yeah,
And
it's been a good time.
you are just very much appreciated and very inspirational. And I love that you've been doing this for so long and just very passionate about it and
Thank you.
helping others. And that we wish you a long, successful career and stay safe out there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I had a good time. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys for watching and listening. And as always, please subscribe and donate to Fuel the Firefighters so we can show the firefighters and rescue the appropriate appreciation for all that they do for us in our community throughout America and I guess for right now, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but hopefully in the future, the whole nation. Yeah. Thank you again for listening. Bye.
Bye-bye.